Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talking Ted Lasso on Morgan Hasn't Seen TV here on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. Jeannine, we started a new series on Morgan Hasn't Seen TV a couple of weeks ago. It has been a show that you've been trying to get me to watch for quite a while, and I haven't done for some such reason. Many reasons. Why don't I do things
I don't know. So stubborn.
I am, but sometimes, it's a good trait to have. Other times it can not be a good trait to have. Sure. But here we are on our second episode, talking the next two episodes of Ted Lasso. This is season 1. Episodes 3 and 4, still very early days of this show. Of course, we're not into all the craziness, all the nitty gritty of everything that everybody else knows about Ted Lasso yet. Obviously, I know really very little about what happens in this show. As I said last episode, to kind of begin, I know of a particular twist betrayal that happens in this show that those watching who have watched will be familiar with exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, but it'll be interesting to see how it comes about, because like all of the things you're seeing with this character seem very positive and seem, great. So knowing that's coming, I think it's an interesting perspective to have, just to see where that's even ends up coming from.
Yeah, I think so, because you can almost try and begin to spot potential little things that could cause this to happen. And I'm being very vague about it, and we're being very vague about it, as I think is only right to be. But it is interesting to have that in the back of your mind and then be presented with such incredible bonding and positivity that you end up getting from this particular person. It's very noticeable, and it's very interesting as to, you almost think, what could possibly go wrong? But I'm sure there are many twists and turns and flips and flops to come in the world of Ted Lasso. I think before we get really dive on into the episodes, I wanted to kind of note that the show, to me, and I did think this last episode as well, I must say, but maybe it was because these couple of episodes, I don't know, or the first 4 episodes, I suppose, feel quite small and compact, and you're only in a handful of places and things like that. Yes, you got an actual football match in episode 2. You didn't see any of the match, but one took place, and I suppose one takes place at the start of, I think, the 4th episode as well. We get one match that has taken place in the course of these 2 episodes today that we don't see any of, and it just makes me realize how, I don't say this in a negative way, but how cheap this show must have been to kind of produce at its beginning.
Yeah, I mean, at the early stages, it's kind of like we're not too sure what we're getting into, because I think the Ted Lasso character was just based off of this little short like ad or like YouTube short thing that Jason Sudeikis did. So he turned that character, who was part of like this ad campaign or something. It was like this small character from something not even related to a full-fledged character or a show or this whole world that he finds himself in. He was literally just like this little piece of like some type of commercial or YouTube short or something, and he ended up turning it into this whole show. So I could see kind of the start of this character being something that they would want to maybe take their time with.
I mean, was he just some sort of frighteningly optimistic American?
Yeah, he was very perky and happy and like a coach character, just like, and he was with Ted.
So he did have something to do with at least coaching.
Yes. So I think he was a
okay.
coach, and he was super just like happy, positive character. And then they turned it into this whole thing, I think, if I'm remembering it correctly.
That happy, positive, endearing character can endear him to people very, very quickly, can't it? As I think we do see in our first episode today, episode 3 of season 1 of Ted Lasso, Trent CRIMM, the Independent.
Yeah.
Because Trent CRIMM is a journalist, a reporter, wants to do a story. He's forced almost to do a story on Ted to try and, I suppose, scandalize him from, the photos that were taken.
Yeah, Rebecca sets it up to make him look bad because there was a bit of a failure with the pictures. Keeley's people were able to kind of catch wind of it and delay the release of them. So Rebecca wakes up elated, ready to open up the tabloids and see these pictures splashed all over the pages, but she doesn't see anything. So she immediately blames Higgins because he was the one who was supposed to put it out there. But Keeley's people caught it. So it's still going to be released, but not when she wanted it to. So ultimately, Keeley kind of comes to her and Ted comes to her, and they're both like, oh, they ask her for her help to stop the pictures. So then she has to stop the pictures because it could easily get tracked back to her that she was the one who released them. So she tries to play it off like, oh, I know someone at the paper. I can get this taken care of for you guys. And so then in order to kind of still put some plan into motion to embarrass Ted, she sets him up to have this interview with Trent CRIMM so he can follow him around and see kind of his ridiculousness and his quote unquote incompetence and write this scathing article about him.
Yeah.
But Trent learns some things about Ted as he's spending time with him, which is kind of what most people do end up kind of finding about Ted in these episodes.
Yeah, because obviously he spends really the whole kind of day there, comes to the training ground, watches some training. It doesn't go horrifically. Ted at least has obviously his unorthodox mentalities towards football and towards people and how to get the best out of people, which can come as a bit of a surprise for someone as unbelievably snarky as Trent CRIMM, because I think he does kind of stalk around the episode in a very slow, kind of plodding manner. That he's just
very kind of critical.
He's trying to seek out. He's trying to just look down his nose at everything.
Yes, and just
he reminds me of what's his name? Thingy from Ratatouille. The
Ego, Anton Ego.
Anton
Ego. A little bit. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, he straight up kind of tells Ted that he feels like it's dangerous what he's doing, that he's like taking this whole, beloved team in his hands, not knowing what he's doing, fully well knowing that he doesn't know what he's doing. And he finds it incredibly irresponsible. So that's like what he's going into this day with Ted with, is that attitude. So when he kind of starts to see these glimmers of a deeper aspect in what Ted is doing, that, the things that he doesn't know, he makes up for with being, supported by Beard, who has, taken the time to really learn everything, and trusting in Nate. And, when they find out that Nate, the Kit Man, was responsible for this play that seems to work at the training, Trent is very much like, you let your Kit Man make a play. Like, he's like, no, he's doing a good job. Like, look, it worked. Like, I want to put my faith and trust in people. And,
well, see, that's the thing, right? Like, if it works, it works. Who cares where it
came
comes
up
from?
with it? Exactly. But it's just kind of what it looks like on the surface. And, he kind of calls Ted out for his mentality of being like, he doesn't care if we win or lose. It's what they kind of learn beyond this. Like, I want to, have an impact on them on and off the field. That's more important to me than anything else.
See, it's things like this that genuinely do hold true to what I obviously have lived within football for my entire life and will continue to. No matter how much I stop watching it, it will just invade my entire life. It does, and it will, and that's fine, and we can't get away from it. That is the nature of living in Britain. But it is things like that, and it is mentalities like that that, in a way, I can't understand why Trent Crimm doesn't understand where Ted's coming from when he says things like, I don't care about winning or losing. It is, well, I understand that's a very blunt thing to say from Ted, right? I get that. It comes across as that, especially from someone who is perceived as incompetent. But one of, if not the most competent football managers, certainly the greatest football manager. This isn't me with bias coming in, by the way, either. This is
generally
a fact.
Yes.
And you can't even dispute it, even if you try and dispute it. But Sir Alex Ferguson, who managed United for 26 years from 86 to 2013, one of his most talked about, finest moments in his entire career with United is, there's one that comes before as well that I want to kind of briefly mention. And I do this for context reasons. I do this for kind of, I have these thoughts. This is you watching Ted Lasso as somebody that doesn't know football.
Which
this
is
me
why
watching Ted Lasso as somebody that really does.
Yes, which is why I wanted you to watch the show for so long, because I wanted to get your perspective on living in that world and knowing those aspects, what you would get out of the show from those things.
Now, when United won the Champions League, the European Cup in 2008, Sir Alex Ferguson went into his halftime team talk, and we were winning 1-0 at the time. But we didn't, he didn't talk about anything about what they should do in the second half. Granted, this is at the end of a season. This is a ridiculously successful period for United. Yeah. Everybody's doing great. That season, we'd already won the league. It was a wonderful time to be a United fan, right? But he went into that halftime team talk and sat everybody down, and instead of talking anything about what they might tweak in the second half to make sure they get the win, ultimately winning the game anyway on penalties, but that's another story. He went around the room and he spoke about various players and their stories, pointing players out and going, look at Patrice Evra, one of my favourite ever United players. He has 16 brothers in Senegal, 16 siblings in Senegal. Grew up in incredible poverty. Look where he is now. Look at the work he has put in, and he goes around the room to these various places. Look at Ji-sung Park here, all the way from Korea. Part of this. How does he get here? Work, dedication, heart. And it's all those kind of things. And this is the same thing that I'm seeing in a utterly bizarre way in the presence of Ted Lasso, and the physical embodiment of Ted Lasso.
I love that.
And I won't ramble on about that story, but the bare bones of
Yeah.
it is that is what happens, and it is reiterated many, many times across various, outlets and podcasts and whatever, that ex-players and people
talk about this story.
With particular fervor. There's also a moment before Alex Ferguson was at United, when he managed Aberdeen in Scotland and won the Scottish Cup there, which was a massive deal because it was only ever 2 clubs from Glasgow that won everything in Scotland. To be honest, that's still the same now. It's only ever 2 clubs from Glasgow that wins anything in Scotland. But Alex Ferguson did this with Aberdeen. He broke that rut with Aberdeen, managing Aberdeen when he was younger. And his post-match interview, immediately after they win the Scottish Cup and break this trend for the first time in God knows how long, I don't even know how many years, it's a ridiculously notable success. The first thing he says was that was a disgrace of a performance. I take no joy in this.
Oh,
these 2 players have won that. These 2 players have won that cup for Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Those who scored the goals. I'm furious. That was a disgrace of a performance. And he is livid. And he's just won.
Yeah.
He is livid. That is not caring about winning and losing. That is caring about the people you are working with.
Yes, and that is Ted. And so I love this whole episode where we're seeing him in the community talking to the kids and even the guys down at the pub who hate him, and the one guy who's like trying to be nice, and then the other guys are like, no, don't be nice to him. The guy who drove him into town, like his cab driver, he invited him to come to his restaurant. So he comes back and Ted takes TRENT CRIMM to his restaurant, and they order this spicy food and it's too hot to eat. But Ted's like, no, I don't want to. We need to at least make a dent in this because I don't want to embarrass him in front of his family and make them think we didn't like the food. So Ted ends up scarfing down all this spicy food just to be polite to this man. And like, he's super excited. He's like, yay, Dad, they like your food. Like, it was so cute. So I love all of these little moments showing like how much people matter to him more than anything else. And so it's something that Trent ultimately learns, that's baked into Ted. It's not for show. It's not an American thing.
No,
it's not him not caring about the game. It's just him, caring about the people.
Yeah. And aren't the most revered coaches in any sport known for doing that, known for crafting relationships with people that then create better
this great morale. Like, people are going to want to work harder for you when they care about you, kind of thing, and so that's really what Trent learns about Ted, because he thinks it's all just kind of this ridiculous American, I don't know anything, I don't care, kind of taking this opportunity for granted, because he even asks him, well, why would you do this? Like, for the money, kind of thing. So when he sees Ted is just genuinely someone who cares about people and wants to do his best in crafting relationships and getting the players to work together, because these 2 episodes as well, he's on this mission to not only kind of crack Roy, because he notices, if I can get Roy on board with me and what I'm trying to do here, others will follow suit. He's the team captain. He's well respected, and all of that. And
that is using an influential person to influence for you.
Yeah, exactly. And he also sees that what's causing problems with the team is the contentious relationship between Roy and Jamie, as Roy is the older one, he's the captain, he's kind of on his way out essentially, and Jamie's kind of the new hot shot. So he sees a lot of the strife between the 2 of them, and so these 2 episodes, he's kind of subtly trying to repair that as well, because it's just his, you know, intuition to know that, like, we need to kind of fix the things we can for the greater good, for the bigger picture of things.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of the Jamie and Roy stuff comes in the next episode,
yeah,
in episode 4, and it's funny at times. Obviously, Ted Lasso is a frequently very, very funny show.
yeah,
It thrives on being weird and hilarious
yeah,
very, very often. But there is genuine things going on as well. And I know I may be treating Talking Ted Lasso as not only just a show where we talk about Ted Lasso,
yeah,
but as a kind of sounding board for my opinions on the general attitude of British football.
yes,
But I think I kind of feel like I have to do that. I kind of feel like I have to
yes,
view it in that light
give that
and
insight,
speak
yeah.
about it in that light,
Well, yes.
because that is how I understand everything that's going on in
Exactly,
this
which
show.
is why I so wanted you to watch the show, because I wanted your perspective as somebody who lives in this kind of space, more than me, that you would have a totally unique perspective on it that kind
Yeah.
of fits into what is happening on the show, and what you get out of it from that. So,
I mean, there's often discussion about kind of where or the quality of certain managers, right? Ted's obviously the manager of Richmond. And the fact that many people can be a good coach. You just have to know football to be a good coach. You have to understand the game of football to be a good coach.
yeah.
But a good coach doesn't necessarily make a good manager. Good players really don't necessarily make a good manager.
Yeah.
And just because you know the game, have played the game, know everything tactically about everything, whatever, doesn't necessarily make you a good or successful manager. And I think so many at all levels of the game fail to understand that. And I mean, this goes right from the top. There are top level coaches who are pure tacticians, and they're great. They're genius tacticians, but they never last more than 2-3 seasons anywhere, because they end up just falling out with people and cannot build true, lasting camaraderie and relationships with people. And a lot of clubs want that, but a lot of clubs don't, or they're resigned to the fact. They're resigned to the fact that that's just what happens, and it doesn't need to be what happens if you go after the right person. In Ted Lasso's case, in Richmond's case, they've inexplicably stumbled upon the right person for them through ridiculous reasons, through reasons of the mentality that Rebecca has of, you don't know anything, you're going to be bad.
Yes, I brought you here to fail and embarrass my ex, like literally.
Yeah. Which obviously for her as well, I mean, these 2 episodes, I know we're speaking in a more general sense at the moment, but it's tough to be her, and it's tough to be inside her head, because she is really the only person who knows she's doing this to watch it all burn, and she's got no sounding board to have those discussions with.
Yes, she has Higgins, and Higgins kind of will here and there tell her he's not incredibly comfortable with everything. But he
she doesn't
also
listen
is
to him.
Yes. Well, yeah. So he does try to kind of like tell her, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. He kind of tells her he's uncomfortable. He's also a subordinate, so he's not really going to
Yeah.
challenge her on it that much. And he's also falling in love with Ted. So he's not kind of a person she can really share this with. So she's kind of holding this hate and revenge so hard that and she has no one to kind of, spread that to. So yeah, like you can understand kind of where she's coming from, and then we get these glimmers of moments where we do see her kind of feel some guilt, because I mean, Keely was innocent in all of this, and she was willing to kind of rope her into this
Yeah.
photo drama just to get at Ted and make him look bad. And so when she ultimately stops it, and Keely's super sweet to her, brings her a gift, and they have this cute little moment, and Keely's like hyping her up, particularly in the second episode. A really
Yeah.
cute friendship, is starting to develop with the two of them. So ultimately that sways her kind of away from this vengeful thing as well. So I like that we have these things where Rebecca realizes that maybe it's not worth it,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So,
But you obviously understand why, because it doesn't
yes.
just come from, spite for no reason. It
Yes,
comes from
especially
spite
when we
for very
do
good reason.
yes, and then, you do actually get to meet Rupert now full
Yeah.
on in that 4th episode, so you really kind of understand her perspective even more. But what I really liked about this episode 3, was getting to know Roy more, which was just
Yes.
really cute to see him with his niece, and he's still the same surly ass that he always is,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
he
they
can
go to
be
the school, don't they,
Yeah.
and do this speech and have a bit of a football
Yeah.
session at this local school who've
Yeah.
won their own
Little
championship.
championship, yeah.
And Roy comes in, no filter about his, speech or
Yeah.
words used whatsoever in front of these 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And he's the exact same. There's no change to his demeanor, and I feel like,
But you can tell he cares, like, seeing him with
oh,
his
of
niece is the
course,
cutest thing. He's sitting there with his serious deadpan, like, reading this, like, lullaby story to his niece, and then, when he uses a bad word, he tells her to shut up, and then he's like, "No, be good, I love you." Like, but
yeah.
still in the same kind of grouchy way that he is.
Is he not reading A Wrinkle in Time to her because he
Oh,
gets
yes, because
gifted that by Ted?
yes, after that whole thing, and he's like, "Am I the little girl in this story?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, you
He
are.
gets mad, yeah.
I think Roy Kent could, or he has such the potential to kind of annoy you as a character because he never seems to change his personality, right? He
Yes.
might be, and I know this is very early on, and I know I don't want to come across as presumptuous or anything like that. He is obviously this particular archetype, right?
Yeah.
And he may soften, but he isn't going to change from this particular archetype.
No, he's always gonna have this demeanor, but his emotional state will change, but his demeanor is gonna stay
Yeah,
the same, which is just really funny for the character.
yeah, which could come off as annoying rather than kind of endearing or
Yeah.
humorous. But I think it's towing such a fine line, and it's doing it so well. And even in the little bit more, but not too much that we've obviously got of Raw yet, Brett Goldstein does such a great job at actually just leaving a sense of sincerity behind his eyes
Yeah.
that you recognize. You understand is there. It has just
Yeah.
been bricked over with annoyance, with a sort of ridiculous stubbornness
Yeah,
that,
surly frustration, yeah.
yeah, he can't kind of take the fact that his career's coming to an end because he's had such a successful career. We're
Yeah.
told he's had
Yeah.
a such a successful career, and you obviously understand that mentality. So I
Yeah.
did love getting more of him in that third episode, and I
Yeah.
think Trent CRIMM sees all this happen himself. He's a perceptive person.
Yeah.
He allows his own mentality to soften a little bit. Don't be entirely cynical, because we get his article at the very end of the episode that he's read out by Higgins over the phone to Rebecca,
Who's excited for it to be this scathing thing.
excited,
Yeah.
absolutely, and isn't the most excited when he actually does read it out, because I think in a very reasonable and realistic way, Trent CRIMM ends up saying, I expect AFC Richmond to be relegated. I expect them to lose constantly, but I can't help root for Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Ted's trying to do.
Yes, he really endears himself to so many people in this episode. Like and even kind of going back to Roy, like Roy ultimately when he's reading A Wrinkle in Time, he gets pissed off because he realizes that like Ted has kind of penetrated and Ted has kind of made him want to be, you know, better to the rest of his teammates because he is starting to get fed up seeing Jamie and the other players pick on Nate because Jamie kind of is the proponent of it. And so the other kind of guys do it to impress Jamie. And so he goes to Ted and asks him to tell them to stop picking on Nate. And he's like, well, no, in my experience, you know, if you tell them to stop, they're only going to do it more. And so Roy's like, so you're not going to do anything about this? And he's like, no. And Roy gets pissed. So that is kind of Ted's cue to be like, you know, I think, you know, if I just keep kind of playing this game with him, he will realize, you know, I'm doing this so that he will, in fact, step up. And then
because ultimately, Roy's the captain of the team. He should be the
he
one
has that sway to handle
that.
the situation. And the fact that he sees him standing up for someone who's seen as lesser than him. So kind of Ted like subtly tries to nurture that. So when kind of Roy, who's been trying to suppress any optimism that Ted tries to rub off on him, when he realizes it's penetrated through and that Ted has kind of, you know, reverse psychologized him, he gets pissed off, but he ultimately does the right thing because of Ted, but he's like annoyed about it.
Yeah, which I think is kind of going to be Roy Kent for the entire
exactly
thing. Right? He's doing the right thing, but being annoyed
about
nice.
Exactly. Yes. And like, oh my gosh, the parking lot scene with him and Keeley was like the funniest thing I've ever seen. I was literally like laughing out loud when he like comes out and he's annoyed and he sees Keeley and you know he does this really bad impression of Ted and she tells him his impressions are bad and the whole exchange between the two of them is just really hilarious. And then she does an impression of him and then he's like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite easy to do an impression of Roy Kent, right?
Yeah.
I think anybody can do an impression of Roy Kent.
Yeah.
You just have to be a little bit Jason Statham-like, but if anything, even colder.
Yeah.
And more
just very dry and dry. Yes. So yeah, I think the funnest part of this third episode was getting to know Roy more and getting to see kind of Ted's reach kind of permeating even further. Where it's reaching Rebecca just a little bit, and you know, where it's reaching Roy and Higgins, and and Trent CRIMM. So,
and all this really does develop as we, I think, can move into the fourth episode. For the Children, it is called. There is a gala that is planned, a charity dinner.
Yes, an annual charity thing where, you know, Rupert, Rebecca's ex, is always kind of the star of the show, always raises so much money when they've thrown it together. So now this is her first year throwing it where they're not a couple. She's not expecting him to be there. She's running it by herself. So she's very nervous on like what to wear and what people are going to say and if it's going to be as successful without him, because he's the one who, brought in all the money with his big friends and, his big charismatic personality. So she has a lot of nerves around this and a lot of insecurities around this. And obviously Ted, being this empath, really kind of senses a lot of that. And even Keely, she kind of senses a lot of that and reaches out to kind of help out Rebecca as well. So I love seeing kind of these people who Rebecca, inadvertently, well, I guess not inadvertently, but like tried to burn for her own kind of selfish reasons, step up for her. It gives her this really interesting sense of perspective, which makes her mission that much more difficult.
That's the tough thing about being Rebecca in this moment, because I think she wants success for herself, but she considers success for herself failure of everything she's running.
Yeah.
And everything she is everything she works in and on. If that fails, that is personal success for her, because it comes from this, I'm going to take down everything you built, Rupert.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy mentality, and we see it
not.
very much. Be understood as not a healthy mentality by Rebecca kind of in this episode, even this early on. I think we see her breaking a little bit, cracking a little bit with all the pressure of it, because she's got nobody really other than Higgins who she doesn't speak to in that,
yes, in a personable way
manner.
Yeah.
That knows exactly what's going on, that understands exactly what's going on, and she needs that, because really I think the best thing for her would be to run the club even better than he did.
Yeah, right. But the fact that she goes the other way with it and thinks, he loves this club more than anything. So watching it burn to the ground will be the best satisfaction for me and the best way for me to get back at him. Yeah.
But then what will you do?
Exactly. And I think she realizes how lonely she is in this episode. She even says it by the end. So yeah, I think there's a lot of realization and perspective that she gets in this fourth episode for sure. So
and you understand why she thinks the way she thinks, because when you do meet Rupert, he is he's a charmer, and he's very sly about what he's doing.
Yes,
because everything he's doing is appears and seems to be incredibly generous and incredibly thoughtful, and just absolutely the most righteous thing to do in any sense. But you understand that behind all that, there is this is just what people want me to do. This is what people expect me to do, and I have to do it. It's all keep up appearances situation.
Yes,
it's all you don't get the truth of it, basically.
Yes.
He's not saying that. He's saying that in public. He's not saying that in private. If he was saying it in private and in public, okay.
But no, he's really kind of snaky about how he handles everything. And I love that Ted clocks him. And Rebecca also, her kind of frustration and hurt comes from the fact that she feels like she's the only one who sees him that way and sees him for who he truly is. And I think even in the previous episode, her and Keely had a really great conversation about it, how, the tabloids are always so kind to men, but are terrible to the women. He's the one who cheated on me, but yet he's still beloved, and I'm getting all this criticism. So a lot of her frustration, I think, comes out of the fact that she feels like she's the only one who sees how terrible Rupert is. So when Ted is able to clock it as well, she feels like a little less alone, which I love that Ted kind of faces off with him in a little in his very Ted way. Because the whole kind of crux of, you know, this benefit is that, you know, Robbie Williams was booked to perform, and then he at last minute he
Right.
bailed. So the whole day before this thing is supposed to happen, they're trying to find a musical guest. And then, you know, once, you know, Ted, before he really kind of knows the extent of Rupert, he asks him, you know, he talks to him about it, and says, "Oh, you know, I can get Robbie on the phone, and he'll be right down here. You know, I know him well. We're friends, so I could probably get him to come down here and this whole kind of thing." So then by the end of the episode, when he sees kind of how, you know, shady he is to Rebecca, you know, he gives her like these backhanded compliments about her in this dress, and you know, donates the last million so he can kind of be the hero of the charity,
Yeah.
and all of these kinds of things, and does these like subtle digs that would look nice to one person, but you know, to you who knows him, you know it's a dig, and Ted is the only other person to clock that, so she feels less alone in that situation. And so I love when Ted kind of has that moment with him, and he says, "So, you know, I'm kind of been thinking about it, and I realize, you know, as easily as you could have called Robbie to come, you could have just as easily told him not to come as well." So he kind of clocks that that Rupert most likely told Robbie not to cancel on
Yeah.
this thing so that he could call him and be the hero kind of situation. Yeah.
Which is obviously an incredibly manipulative way to be. But speaking of Robbie Williams, and obviously the not fondness that America has for this man.
I mean, it's not a not fondness, it's a not aware of. I mean,
Or
obviously
not awareness, not awareness.
I'm aware, like millennials, I think, know Robbie Williams because Millennium was his huge song here in America, and it was playing.
Okay.
It was a huge part of the TRL generation of rotation of videos. So I was talking to other millennial friends, and like, yeah, we really loved the song Millennium, and that was like a huge thing. And I knew him in that lexicon of that era of TRL and Carson Daly and music videos and all of that. So that's how I was familiar with him. And so yeah,
I just find it hilarious. This movie, obviously, it's been out for a while now.
Yeah, since I think like Christmas time, but it's not doing well.
It's
they've
just
already
really
kind of
doing it. It's really, really done really bad,
and it's not doing good there either, right?
It's doing okay. It's certainly doing better. But it's I don't think it's doing great, and I find it fascinating. And when his name came up in this episode, and Ted's obviously like, I've got no idea who that is.
Yes, he was very ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, I just find it really funny because it's a mad mentality. And look, okay, I am obviously very aware of who he is and know many of his songs, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I'm not interested in going to see this movie where he's played by a monkey. You know, I don't care. Many people do care. Some people really do care.
Yeah.
But why they thought really, really pushing it in the US, a biopic, a weird biopic at that, like an unorthodox biopic.
Yes, yeah.
Of somebody that ultimately, by name recognition, the US doesn't know.
Yeah, because I mean,
songs,
I think it's from the
you might know if you played a song, you might have heard the song.
Yes, but not realized it was him.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Why they thought?
Yeah. I mean, because I guess they were
worse than I thought it would. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I saw some really big creators, you know, do these kind of promotional posts reviewing the film and giving it a really good review and talking about how much they liked it. And these are people who have said, like, I'm not going to like take money to review something and not be honest about it. So when these people are like doing these paid promotions, obviously they're saying it's good. And these are like American, you know, movie, you know, influencers. So for that not to even really kind of help with the push of things. And I think it's from the same director who did Rocket Man, but obviously like Elton John has crossed over, not unlike Robbie Williams. So I guess and his Rocket Man biopic was very kind of unique in the same way that this is. Like, it had a lot of flair in terms of kind of your typical biopic. So maybe they just felt like people would think, you know, wow, I really liked Rocket Man, so I'm gonna like this too, and maybe I'll give it a chance. But
I understand that, but why do people? But this is a biopic. This is the biopic genre. Why do people go and see your biopics? It's because they want to know about the person. It's because of the person. They don't care who made it. They don't care, you know, the exact, that sort of stuff. It's not an auteur movie. It's not
but I think the thought, but I think the thought of the studio is it's a biopic by the person who made a biopic that people enjoyed. So
I get that, but that's an idiotic way of thinking, I think, because it's a biopic. And why do people go and see biopics? Because of who it is about. Yeah. People are interested in who it is about. If people don't know who it's about because they don't know who
and
it
if they were going to do this big push in America, they could have kind of, you know, I mean, I think a lot of musicals last year hid the fact that there were musicals in their advertisements. So I think there could have been a way where they could have sold this movie as like a music movie and kind of hidden the fact that it was like a biopic about a real person who's supposed to be known. I mean, maybe it would have done a little bit better.
Possibly. I really don't know. But it'd be like if, I don't know, who's a big American only person that Britain wouldn't know.
That doesn't have a crossover appeal. I mean, is Meg the Stallion like?
I mean, well, yeah, because I'm well aware. I think people are well aware. I'm talking about like a massive American, maybe a country star or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. What's his name? Like Keith Urban.
Yeah. He's Australian actually, so I would think if anyone had any kind of crossover appeal, it would be a non-American country singer.
Well, I didn't know he was Australian, but someone of that ilk.
Yes, who is Brooks or something.
Exactly, who is clearly a very, very well-known
entity
and beloved musician who Britain would have no concept of.
Yeah.
It'd be the same as trying to do
yes. So it was just very funny little tangent, little wrong.
Yes, big tangent.
But just the fact that he came up and like Ted not knowing who he was just felt very funnily topical to what's happening right now with him. I think how Ted ultimately handles the situation, I think, is really well done. And, he does find Rebecca outside in this moment after Rupert has done kind of a dig to her. And, she's really upset and she kind of talks about, I forgot how cruel he could be. And, when we were together, I thought I did everything right. He told me what to wear and what to say and how to act, and I did all of it. And I'm still here alone. And I don't want to be alone. And the fact that Ted is this man that she is willing to throw under the bus because her hurt is so deep. And he is over there consoling her and making sure she's okay and holding her when she's having this vulnerable moment. I can't even imagine the plethora of conflicting feelings happening within her that she plays great to in this episode.
Yeah, she really does. And I do think before we kind of end as we wrap up, we do have to talk about Jamie and Roy in this episode because there's so much that is about them. There's this whole plot, obviously, that we've spoken about already, of Ted trying to
get them on the same page.
Not force is the wrong word,
but get them to at least get along to a degree so that it's not affecting the team dynamics.
Yeah.
And so
which is always an issue, right? This is always an issue in a team dynamic. It is this exact reason, not in the same way, but it is this exact reason why I stopped playing football as a team, because I didn't get on with people. and you know, I didn't like people that were on my team, so why am I
Yeah.
dealing with them?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm someone that kind of likes that mentality. Like, if I don't like you, I'm just gonna not put up with you.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna, you know, you're out, you're away.
Yeah.
I might have to look at you if you pass me in the street, but I'm going to leave this situation because I don't want to deal with people I don't like.
Yeah.
Which
it's easier.
Okay, might be cold. Is definitely where both Jamie and Roy fit, I think, at this point. But ultimately, they're professional footballers in the Premier League that you kind of have to any degree, work together.
Yes.
And that's obviously, I think, the healthier thing to do. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. but it's difficult, and they struggle. So like Ted is kind of pushing it, so he even asked Rebecca to put them all at the same table so that there could be some kind of mediation, and he kind of tries to open up a dialogue between the two of them and have them talk about what is it that you guys don't like about each other. And you know, it's all these kind of surface level things that, you know, you're a jerk and I don't like you, and you're old and I don't like you, and it's like nothing really deeper than that. And they're just kind of throwing, you know, barbs at each other. And then it comes to this auction situation where Jamie kind of pulls this a bit of a shady move. So he goes up on the stage, and you know, this beautiful woman in the back starts betting on him. And so Keely gets jealous. So she starts betting on him. So then she ultimately ends up betting the most just to go home with her actual boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Rebecca, being a girl's girl, tells her, you know, that girl was Jamie's other +1. He kind of invited her to come to purposely bet on him to, like, you know, make him look good and kind of make you jealous. And they have this really great conversation about accountability and, you know, her kind of feeding off of her own relationship, but not doing it in a really negative way. She's kind of trying to pay the information forward, because it makes me think of a scene in the first Sex and the City movie. You know, Carrie and Big, our big main couple, are about to get married, and her friend is struggling with her relationship. She just found out her husband was cheating on her. So she goes to Mr. Big, the guy who's about to get married to Carrie, and tells him, you guys are crazy to get married, and like puts her dramas onto him. And then he ultimately gets cold feet and doesn't go through with the marriage. So in this instance, Rebecca is kind of in the similar situation. She's in the heat of her own pain, but she pays it forward in a way of perspective and thought and care, and says, hey, if you're going to be with this guy, just know who he is, and see if, you know, he will actually take accountability for the things that he does and the way that he hurts you.
And everything we've seen so far is that he is the kind of person who just doesn't do that. I mean, do we blame it? It's this whole constant question, isn't it? Do we blame him for being the person he is, or do we blame his environment for being the person he is? Because he's clearly been told from the
that
age
he can
of
kind of get away with
that he is a genius footballer. He's going to be the best. He's, you know, getting everything, massive contracts. He's 23. He's, you know,
on the brink of his big career, and everybody loves him and all this stuff, and he gets whatever he wants.
And he's traditionally pretty, and he's got people fawning over him.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in that sense, he's obviously going to be as stunningly arrogant as he is.
Yes. And so I love that after this conversation that Kaylee has with Rebecca, which, like I said, Rebecca could have taken her pain and like just told Kaylee to dump him. You're an idiot to be with him. But no, she like really focuses it in on kind of framing it for Kaylee so that Kaylee can kind of come to her own conclusion. So when he apologizes to her for kind of manipulating her in that way, um, she asks him, "Do you even know what you're apologizing for? Like, do you even know you tell me sorry all the time for these things, and do you even know what you're sorry for?" And he says, "You say that to me all the time." So it's clear like he never gives an answer to why he's apologizing. He's just apologizing. And so she tells him accountability matters. And I don't know if this is going to work.
You need to know what you've done wrong, though.
Exactly. Or it means nothing. And she ultimately, once she kind of finds out, she tries to make him jealous by betting on Roy. And so it's like this old lady and her betting on Roy. And I love how Roy kind of handles this. He goes up to her and he says, and please just leave me out of your little drama. You betting on me like that to make him jealous made me feel like an idiot, and I didn't like it. And Keely immediately apologizes and he immediately says thank you. And I love just like this quick communication. You just say how you feel. She takes it in, and it sets up a really nice dynamic, I think, between her and Roy. And then Jamie thinks she's dumb for apologizing to him. And that's when she realizes, yeah, this is not going to work, Jamie.
Yeah. It's, I think already after 4 episodes, Ted Lasso as a show is clearly very open as a show. It's clearly, it wants to promote such healthy personal communication, I think, and such healthy your mental states.
Yes, I told you, because this show really delves into mental health and those kinds of things, and how people deal with it and how people handle it or push it down or those kinds of things. Because we're going to go on a bit of a journey with Ted and some deeper things that he has kind of been suppressing and kind of makes up for with all this positivity. I mean, even with Beard, he takes his new girlfriend who he met at this like chess club, and she gets pissed at him by the end of the night, but he immediately knows what he did wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not like he is completely oblivious to it or he did it on purpose. He kind of just is just who he is. He knows it's wrong, but he can pinpoint it. So I think that's also kind of a mental health thing, when you can kind of analyze the things you do and take it in and try to understand it, then you can kind of learn from it. So I like that even when characters do the wrong choices or make the wrong choices, they are fully kind of aware of what they did wrong and kind of take it in and try to understand it. So
yeah, there's a lot to think about, really.
Yes.
And it's exciting, it's good, it's enjoyable as a show. It's very, very enjoyable as a show. Lastly, I wanted to mention a conversation that Jamie and Roy do have with each other.
Yeah.
That becomes a little bit more open. I mean, does it make me like Jamie more? No, because I just despise every fiber of people who are like Jamie. And that's just me being me. But because I don't really understand his mentality either. He says to Roy, I used to look up to you. I used to have your poster on my wall. But, you're
not that player.
Anymore.
You're not that same player anymore.
Like,
but you walk around here, you strut around here. Like, he sees him kind of being the captain, trying to be in charge, as him thinking he's still that and strutting around like that.
Well, yeah, see that, and that is what I don't get in his whole mentality, because has, at that point, Roy not, as captain as well, not earned the right to, not earn some sort of respect, even if just for the career he's had? You can look at it and go, this guy's
done. Yeah, he's
player,
earned.
knows what he's talking
he's earned
about.
that respect. Yeah.
And I would think he has. And Roy doesn't respect Jamie at all because he's doing the same strut about argument that Jamie's presenting to Roy. But that's unfounded because he has won nothing. He has done nothing in his career.
But I like that he can recognize that he was Jamie. When he started his career, he was Jamie. And so that's where they end up kind of finding the common ground. That, he's not trying to strut around. He's just trying to be captain. He's also really kind of struggling with not being the player that he used to be. So that's where kind of a lot of Roy's frustration comes from. And Roy can relate to the fact that Jamie is this young, cocky thing because he was also the young, cocky thing. So that's where they end up ultimately kind of agreeing to disagree, and they have a drink together and find a bit of common ground. So I like that, Keely's finally kind of separating herself from Jamie, because Keely has proven to be like such a good person. She cares about people. And so she really does not fit with someone who's as selfish as Jamie. But I like that Jamie and Roy can find some common ground, but we still see that the contention, they don't like each other, but they can find some common ground at least. So I think that was a great scene as well.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's a good place to end our discussion.
Yes. Oh, and Rupert also ends up leaving the party with the second girl that Jamie brought.
That's true. Yeah.
So yes.
He's who he is.
Yes.
Really.
And then
you can't change a man like that at that age.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of something to flaunt in Rebecca's face. But then Keely comes with 2 big bottles of champagne and they go riding on a cute little cart. And have a nice time. So
it's good. It's interesting to see, where it'll go. I mean, when do Richmond get their first win under Ted Lasso? I have no idea.
Wait to see. And we hear Ted say that his wife and his son are going to be coming the next week.
That's right.
So, we know that there's a weird vibe between him and his wife at the moment. So we're going to kind of learn how that's affecting him or how it's going to affect him and get the whole kind of story on that. So I'm excited to kind of jump into that aspect of Ted and see kind of what's working inside there.
I think any more depth we can get to Ted, because a lot of the time he comes across as, again, I suppose it's the show may thrive on somewhat one-note characters that just have a glimmer of something else that it never quite shows you, but teases at you.
Yes, that it's there. They on the surface they're this ridiculous archetype, but there's more brewing under the surface with every character.
And as soon as we start getting that with Ted, which may very well be in this next episode, certainly probably in the next episode of Talking Ted Lasso over the course of 2 episodes that we talk about. I think it's only going to deepen an affection for the show that I've quickly come to have, and an appreciation for what it's doing and what it's bringing to television, and an enjoyability factor. It's not just all about the football, is it?
Yeah.
It's really not. It's really not. Well, are we calling it there? Is there anything else to say?
No, I think these were some solid episodes, and we got some nice insight from you from the UK side of things. I appreciate that. But I'm glad you're enjoying it so far.
I'll always go on some stupid tangent about United-based things when it comes to this.
Well, this was very relevant.
I think I would like to think so. Anyway. Yes. This is Talking Ted Lasso on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. Do subscribe, ding your notification bell for all the other good stuff. We have, obviously, this show alternates weeks now with Discovering Dawson's Creek as the other Morgan Hasn't Seen TV series. Of course, subscribe to the main It's a Wonderful Podcast feed as well on all major podcast platforms. For the main show, It's a Wonderful Podcast, celebrating old movies every single Friday. And for Morgan Hasn't Seen, regular every Wednesday, where we obviously talk movies on there in various series.
Yes.
That are curated by yourself, Jeannine. Yes. Find that on all major podcast platforms. We have Patreon links, donation links, social media, all in the description of this episode. If you want to support us over there, we would love you endearingly forever, I suppose, is an appropriate word to say. It's also been scrolling down at the bottom of the screen all episode long as well. But I think, unless there is anything else to say, maybe do your nice Roy Kent impression again.
Oh my God. 3, 2, 1.
Bye. Ted.